Many thanks to DayZ Podcast, Pandemonium, Fetless Faction Vanilla servers, Atlas, Mutated Jurassic Outbreak servers, one original DayZ servers, Dust Vanilla servers, Sheriff Line, Apocalypse Now server, Sauerkraut, Sgt. Pepper's DayZ Invasion server, and PGZ servers for making this video possible. DayZ 1.22 has significantly increased how much damage we do during headshots in this patch, making headshots much more important now when using melee and ballistic attacks. So in this video we're going to look at how nearly all guns in DayZ can one-shot KO players even while wearing the best head protection, how there are actually 6 melee weapons that can one-hit KO players because of these changes, check out the buffed headgear that now protects us against this extra damage, and go over the last minute nerfs for fisting other players. In the first experimental release for DayZ 1.22, the devs removed the ability for some heavy attacks to stun players, but this has since been reverted to allow all heavy attacks to stun players again. Along with reverting the changes came a nerf to how much damage fists do, so every time you punch with nothing inside your hands, because at that time, the punch did the same damage as a crowbar. Here are the changes to the normal punch from last patch to this one at 1.22. So the nerf comes in the form of 20% less shock damage from 15 to 12 on the normal attack and from 20 to 17 on the heavy attack. This means that one extra punch will be required to KO a player now when punching a player with normal attacks in the chest, but due to how the heads of our characters now take extra damage, it will take 4 punches to KO a player instead of 6 punches, a buff of over 30%. In the last patch, a punch inflicted 15 shock damage to the head of a player and 15 shock damage to the chest of a player, but now, even though the punches got nerfed by 20%, a punch to the head inflicts 24 shock damage in this patch, a buff of 60% extra shock damage compared to last patch. In previous patches, attacking the head of a player inflicted the exact same amount of shock damage as attacking the chest of a player. As discovered in a hitboxes video, this meant that trying to hit the player in the head was completely pointless with melee attacks, especially if they had even the most basic protection on. Now in 1.22, we inflict 2 times the shock damage as we did last patch and the previous patches when hitting the head of another player, making going for those headshots an absolute must during melee combat now. If you're not going for the head, you're doing half the damage that you can potentially do, as any weapon you swing will inflict twice the shock damage in this patch, with this also applying to any ballistic type of damage too, so even bolts from the crossbow bolts, even explosives as well. All shock damage to the head has been doubled, not 10%, not 20%, frickin' doubled. Now, as we discovered with the new melee weapon tier system seen here, the sledgehammer and mace can one-shot players with a heavy attack on any body part pretty much, but now 4 more melee weapons can do this if you hit the head of a player. None of the sharp weapons in DayZ can one-shot kill or even one-shot KO a player, but most tiers of blunt can now. Any blunt weapon that is tier 3 or higher will KO a player with a heavy attack in their head if they're unprotected. This is because tier 3 blunt heavy attacks inflict 40 shock damage, which when doubled with the head hitbox now in this patch results in 80 shock damage or an instant black screen. Any melee attack that inflicts above 37.5 shock damage will do this to players now, which in tier 3 is a knuckle duster, shovel and baseball bat. This means that a heavy attack from a knuckle duster can one-hit KO players. The only tier 4 blunt weapon I could find is the pipe wrench, so the pipe wrench is so much stronger than it was last patch. It's capable of one-hit KOing a player if you do a heavy attack to the head, with the 2 tier 5s being the sledgehammer and mace, which can one-shot KO with a heavy attack on the torso too. Due to these changes, infected attacks also get shock damage doubled when they hit our heads, but for the life of me I could not get an infected to hit me in the head, so I guess this is completely irrelevant. I had hundreds of attacks while I was prone and while I was crouched. I couldn't get them to hit my head hitbox. Also in the last patch you could hit a player in the head with any low caliber round and they wouldn't go unconscious. This was most of the low caliber rounds, but now due to shock damage being doubled to the head, all weapons will now one-hit KO players when hit in the head on any location. This is a game changer for head protection because it means even with the best head protection on in the game, the only weapon that cannot one-hit KO you is the Amphibia S. So even a chambered, badly damaged IJ-70 will one-hit KO you with the best head protection available in the game, making, like I said, this an absolute game changer when it comes to headshots in DayZ. Even with these changes, headgear will still protect us a substantial amount like it did last patch, so it's very much worth using still, but it won't protect us near as much as it did last patch against projectiles, and aiming for the head will always be the best option when your enemy is wearing any form of chest armor. However, against melee weapons we've seen some great buffs to head armor as shown in my previous video here, so deciding to attack the head of a protected player versus the unprotected chest of a player is a bit more complicated. For example, the hard hat, hockey helm, skate helm, tanker helm and the welding mask will protect you from getting one-shotted from tier 3 blunt heavy attacks to the head, but it won't protect you from these 3 melee weapons. The Coif, dirt bike, flight, ballistic, combat, tactical, fire and Norse helm will protect you from getting one-shotted from all of these weapons, but not the tier 5 blunt heavy attacks, so the sledgehammer and the mace will still one-hit KO players with the ballistic helmet on. The only 3 helmets that completely protect you from getting one-hit KO'd in DayZ then against melee attacks are the Gorka or Assault helmet, the Great helmet and the massively buffed motorbike helmet this patch. If a player has one of these 3 on but has no chest protection, it's always best to go for the chest to inflict more shock damage that way. These changes are pretty drastic for DayZ, making the motorbike helmet a god tier item in the early game. It used to be a mid item, but now if you're wearing the motorbike helmet, you are a king amongst fresh spawns, and the assault helmet is the best headgear in the game when you combine its ballistic and melee protection stats now. If you come across a player that has an assault helmet and any sort of chest protection, this patch has made them a walking tank against melee attacks. Fresh spawns, beware of armoured players. Your punches do less damage, their protection protects them more. Aiming for the legs of this player will inflict more shock damage in this patch. This patch has seriously changed how melee and armor works as well, so if you want to learn about how all of that works, you can see these videos. But if you've watched all of those videos and you've watched this video right here, you are up to date with how armor and melee attacks have changed in 1.22, as well as double shock damage to the head. Let me know how you feel about being able to output and receive double shock damage to the head this patch. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good day.